In the quiet, tree-lined streets of Maple Creek, life moved at a gentle pace. Children played in manicured front yards until dusk. White picket fences stood as symbols of order and domestic calm. It was the kind of town where nothing truly bad ever seemed to happen. The Harrison family fit perfectly into this idyllic picture. Mark and Sarah Harrison, high school sweethearts, had built a life here. They raised 2 children, Emily, Josh, in a 2-story home with a welcoming front porch. To the outside world, they were the embodiment of the American dream. A happy family, a stable home, a peaceful existence. Mark was a respected local accountant. He was known for his steady hand and his quiet, dependable nature. Sarah was a vibrant volunteer at the local library. She organized community events with a warm and infectious smile. Their lives seemed transparent, an open book for all to see. They projected an image of unity and contentment. Their social media pages were filled with smiling photos from family vacations, holiday gatherings. But symbols can be deceiving, and houses can hold secrets within their walls. No one saw the subtle tensions, no one heard the unspoken words. No one could have imagined the darkness that was slowly gathering just beneath the surface of their perfect suburban life. Behind the closed doors of the Harrison home, the atmosphere was different. The smiles seen in public often faded. A quiet tension would settle over the dinner table. Old arguments, seemingly resolved years ago, would resurface in sharp, coded remarks. They were quiet battles of will. They were fought with pointed glances and words left unsaid. The air was thick with a history that neither Mark nor Sarah was willing to confront directly, a ghost that haunted the hallways of their beautiful home. Josh would often retreat to his room with headphones on, blocking out the heavy silence. Emily, ever the observer, grew quiet and watchful. She noticed the way her mother's jaw would tighten when her father spoke about his family. Visual motif. A close-up shot of a crack running down a pristine white wall. The source of this tension was a secret. It was a secret buried deep in the family's past. It was never spoken of. It was a forbidden topic. But its presence shaped everything. The secret was a poison, slowly seeping into the foundations of their family. The family was living on a fault line, pretending the ground beneath them wasn't shaking. Sarah hid her growing bitterness. Mark hid his deep-seated guilt. The children learned to hide their confusion and their fear. They were all actors in a play, performing roles for each other and for the outside world. But the strain of the performance was beginning to show, and it was only a matter of time before the carefully constructed world of the Harrison family would shatter completely. The hidden feud within the Harrison family did not begin overnight. Its roots stretched back decades to a time before Mark and Sarah were married. It started with a family business, a small construction company founded by Mark's father. It was intended for both Mark and his younger brother David. From a young age, the 2 boys were taught the trade, but the brothers were profoundly different. Mark was methodical and cautious. He was the numbers man. David, on the other hand, was the charismatic salesman. He was charming. He was impulsive. He was a natural risk taker. In the early years, their opposing strengths seemed to complement each other. Their father believed this balance would make the company stronger, but it failed to account for the simmering rivalry just beneath the surface of their brotherly bond. The turning point came during an economic downturn. The housing market stalled. Harrison and Sons faced its first major crisis. David saw an opportunity. He presented a plan. He claimed he had secured private investors. Reluctantly, Mark agreed. The project was a disaster. The private investors were nothing more than high-interest, predatory lenders. David started making increasingly reckless decisions. Mark discovered the true extent of the deception too late. His brother had not just been overly optimistic, he had been dishonest. He confessed to everything. He had betrayed not only his brother's trust, but their father's legacy. In the aftermath, a terrible decision was made to avoid public scandal and potential criminal charges for David. Mark agreed to take the fall. He used his personal savings to pay off the most urgent debts. He quietly dissolved the company, absorbing the losses himself. In return, David agreed to disappear. It was a secret pact, made in shame and desperation. Narrator V.O. The pact with David became the Harrison family's foundational secret. It was a wound that never healed. They moved to Maple Creek to start over. Narrator V.O. They built a new life, a new home, and a new public image of stability and success. Narrator V.O. All on a foundation of a devastating lie. Narrator V.O. The secret fundamentally changed Mark. The quiet, dependable man became haunted by a deep sense of guilt and failure. Narrator V.O. This guilt manifested as a rigid need for control. Narrator V.O. Sarah, feeling stifled and resentful, started keeping small secrets of her own. She opened a credit card that Mark didn't know about. Sarah, it was on sale. Narrator V.O. She would tell him she got items on sale when she had paid full price. It was a quiet rebellion. Sarah. Hello? Narrator V.O. A phone call from a distant aunt who might mention David's name would send a chill through the house. Narrator V.O. Emily, ever the perceptive one, noticed these patterns. She started to piece together fragments of a story she wasn't supposed to know. Narrator V.O. The feud reached a critical point when Emily was accepted into a prestigious and very expensive university out of state. Sarah, she has to go. Narrator V.O. For Sarah, it was a moment of immense pride. She was adamant that Emily should go no matter the cost. Narrator V.O. For Mark, however, the acceptance letter was a source of profound anxiety. It brought back the old ghosts of Harrison and Sons. Mark, it's too expensive. Narrator V.O. He told Emily and Sarah that it was simply too expensive. He was unable to articulate the real fear behind his refusal. Sarah, you're a coward. You punish us for your brother's mistakes. Mark, no, I'm trying to protect us. Narrator V.O. His refusal was the spark that ignited the long-simmering resentment. The argument that followed was unlike any they had ever had. She brought up the secret, speaking its name aloud for the first time in years. Narrator V.O. The children heard everything. The carefully constructed walls came crumbling down. Narrator V.O. The secret was out, but its release did not bring relief. It brought only pain and division. The hidden feud was now an open war. The night it happened began with an argument. It was the same argument they had been having for weeks, but this time it felt different. It felt final. Sarah had made a decision. she had secretly applied for a home equity loan to cover the costs. She waited until the children were out of the house to tell him. She laid the loan approval papers on the kitchen table. Mark stared at the papers in disbelief. To him, this was the ultimate betrayal. The carefully controlled man was gone. The fight was brutal. Words were used like weapons. Every secret, every small betrayal was dragged out into the open. After the shouting stopped, Sarah retreated to the master bedroom, locking the door behind her. Downstairs, Mark paced the living room. The family photos on the mantelpiece mocked him with their happy, smiling faces. He had to get out. He walked out into the cool night air, slamming the front door behind him. Mark drove aimlessly for hours. He replayed the argument over and over in his head. As his anger crystallized, so did the plan. He was no longer running from the past. He was driving toward it. He drove 2 hours to the gritty industrial city where his brother lived. A small, run-down apartment above a bar. He pounded on the door. The door creaked open and David stood there. He greeted him with a familiar, easygoing smile. Mark listened to his brother's rambling monologue. He showed no remorse, no understanding of the damage he'd caused. He finally cut David off mid-sentence. He laid out the full cost of his brother's betrayal, piece by painful piece.
It was just money, Mark. Get over it. You always were the weak one.
Those words were the final trigger. In that instant, something inside Mark broke. What happened next was a blur of motion. Mark lunged at his brother. A lamp crashed to the floor, plunging the room into near darkness. Mark stumbled back. His fingers closed on a cold, heavy object. It was a gun. He raised the weapon, hand shaking. The shot was deafening in the small apartment. A heavy thud, a body hitting the floor. Rage drained away, replaced by sickening shock. The explosive moment was over. A new, more terrible silence began.
I'm at an apartment. My brother is hurt. There was an accident.
The investigation began with a strangely calm call from a city 2 hours away. They found Mark waiting outside. He was eerily calm. When officers approached, he offered no resistance. They found the scene just as Mark had described. On the floor lay a man, David Harrison. He had a single gunshot wound to the chest. The scene told a story of a brief, violent struggle. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was personal. In the interview room, Mark Harrison finally began to talk. He kept repeating, "Oh, I don't know why I did it. I just snapped." The breadcrumb trail came from an unexpected source. The forensic analysis of Mark's car. Investigators found a small, worn, leather-bound journal. The journal was a revelation. The final entry was dated the night of the murder. It was just one sentence. He has to pay for what he did. Armed with the journal, the detectives brought Mark Harrison back. He stared at the journal and the last of his defenses crumbled. The confession that followed was the full, devastating truth. He admitted that when he drove to David's apartment, he knew it would be the last time he saw his brother. He admitted that when he picked up the gun, it wasn't self-defense. It was an act of execution. Mark Harrison pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 25 years to life. The investigation was closed. The verdict was in. Mark Harrison was now a convicted murderer. The man who had craved control above all else now lived a life where every moment was dictated by others. The community of Maple Creek was left in a state of shock. Sarah sold the house on Elm Street. It was impossible to stay. She and the children moved to a different town. She was plagued by guilt and unanswerable questions. Could she have done something differently? Emily did not go to her dream university. She carried the weight of being the catalyst for the final fatal argument. Josh, who had once found his escape on the football field, quit the team. He became quiet and withdrawn. There were 3 survivors adrift on a lifeboat, together but profoundly alone. For the outside world, the case was closed, but for the surviving Harrisons, it was the beginning of a different kind of life sentence. The story of the Harrison family is a dark and cautionary tale. It's a story about the corrosive power of secrets. The pact was not just a lie, it was a poison. It slowly twisted a good man into something he no longer recognized. He built a life on a lie, and the strain of maintaining that lie ultimately demanded a higher price than the truth ever would have. The tragedy of the Harrison family leaves us with a profound and unsettling question. Do family secrets ever stay buried?